and weeks later, a 6-year-old boy was dead. It started with a house that was never finished. The family had begun building it, but the money ran out halfway through. And for months, the unfinished walls sat as a daily reminder of everything going wrong. So they did what people in their situation often do. They went looking for answers. Not from a bank, not from family, but from a man known locally as a sorcerer. Someone people believed could see what others couldn't. He listened to them describe their troubles, and then he told them there was only one way forward. But it wasn't money he was talking about. It wasn't another prayer either. According to him, something precious had to be given up first. Not an animal, a child. The eldest boy in the family, he said. Somewhere between 6 and 10 years old, and it needed to happen before the next full moon. The family said nothing. They simply got up and walked out of the temple in silence. What they decided to do with that advice, nobody outside that small circle would know for weeks. A few villages away, a 6.5-year-old boy named Satish Kumar was living through an ordinary childhood, the kind every parent hoped for. He was the eldest in his family, full of the energy only a 6-year-old has, and he spent his afternoon running around with the other kids in the neighborhood, including a 16-year-old boy who often looked out for him. It was the 13th of May, 2006. Nothing about that day stood out. The boys played through the morning and into the afternoon, the way they always did. Later that afternoon, Satish Kumar told his mother he was going to a neighbor's house to watch television. Something so ordinary that she barely thought twice about it. His older friend walked him over, stayed a little while, and then left for home. The last ordinary thing anyone remembered about that day. By evening, Satish Kumar still hadn't come home. At first, his mother assumed he had simply lost track of time somewhere nearby. But as the hours dragged on with no sign of him, worry turned into real fear. She began asking around the neighborhood. No one had seen him. As night fell, more people joined the search, calling his name into the dark, checking every corner of the village they could think of. Hours passed, and there was still no sign of Satish Kumar. The next morning, a neighbor approached the family with news no parent should ever have to hear. Satish Kumar's body had been found in a nearby field. That neighbor would later become the prime accused in the case. Police arrived and examined the scene, but instead of opening a murder investigation, they treated the case as an unexplained death, a routine classification used when the cause isn't yet clear. The body was sent for a postmortem. What the doctor found told a very different story than unexplained. Satish Kumar had been strangled, and he had also suffered a head injury. This was not misfortune. This was not an accident. By every medical sign, this was a killing. And yet, despite a post-mortem report sitting in police files that pointed clearly to murder, nothing changed. The case stayed exactly as it had been filed. Weeks went by, no one reclassified it. No one connected it to anything more than an unfortunate, unexplained death. More than a month after Satish Kumar's death, a senior police officer was assigned to take a fresh look at the case. He went back into the village and began re-questioning people who had already given their statement months before, hoping someone might remember something they hadn't said. It was slow, frustrating work. The same accounts, the same details, nothing new. On the surface, it looked like a trail that had gone completely cold. But investigators had no idea that someone in the village had witnessed the entire murder and had stayed silent for more than a month. That someone was a 16-year-old boy who had walked Satish to the neighbor's house that afternoon. According to his own account, after leaving Satish there, he went home, but returned around 4 o'clock that evening. What he saw when he walked back in was a 16-year-old boy who had walked Satish to the neighbor's house that afternoon. According to his own account, after leaving Satish there, he went home, but returned around 4 o'clock that evening. What he saw when he walked back in changed everything. The neighbor, the same man who would later be named the prime accused, had a rope around Satish's neck. The teenager watched in horror as the man struck the boy's head against the wall. When he asked what was happening, the answer came back chillingly calm. The man told him this was a human sacrifice done for his family's prosperity. Then he turned on the teenagers directly, warning him that if he ever spoke of what he had seen, he would meet the same fate. To buy his silence, he handed the teenager Satish's phone and promised him money to keep quiet. That same evening, terrified, the boy left with his mother for his aunt's house in another town and stayed away for nearly a month. He came back to the village. He said nothing for almost 2 more weeks. It wasn't guilt that kept him silent. It was the very real fear that the man who had just killed a child in front of him might come after him next. It was only when the new investigating officer started asking questions around the village that the teenager finally came forward and told the truth. With his account in hand, the investigation moved fast. The man he had identified was arrested, along with members of his family. From there, the evidence began to take shape. Investigators recovered the rope used in the strangling. They found Satish's mobile phone kept exactly where the teenager said he had hidden it. They discovered a half-burnt sack and its ashes, discarded by the accused. And when they went back to examine the inside walls of his house more closely, they found blood stains that would later be confirmed as human blood. For weeks, investigators had nothing. Now one discovery led to another and the case finally began making sense. It was only after the arrest, the recoveries and the forensic findings all lined up with what that teenager had described that the accused gave a confession admitting to the killing. By that point, the confession wasn't what cracked the case. It was simply the last piece slotting into a puzzle the evidence had already built. Investigators also traced the idea itself back to the temple. 2 other people who had been present that day came forward, describing the same conversation, the same advice, the same instruction to sacrifice a young boy before the next full moon. When the case went to the trial, the prosecution argued this had been planned from the very start, that the accused, his family, and the sorcerer had conspired together from the moment that advice was given at the temple. The defense fought back hard, and their strongest argument centered on the teenager. If he really witnessed a murder, they asked, why did he wait 40 days to say anything? By the time he came forward, the boy's death had already made headlines, with his photographs circulated in local newspapers. Surely, the defense argued, a witness telling the truth would have spoken up the moment he realized what he had seen mattered. His silence, they said, looked less like fear and more like a story built later, possibly shaped by police pressure to give the investigation a witness it desperately needed. The defense also turned to the physical evidence. The blood stains on the wall, they pointed out, weren't discovered until a week after the teenager gave his statement. They were in the original confession. To the defense, that gap suggested the evidence had been arranged afterward to support a case that was otherwise built on a single, questionable witness. The trial court weighed these arguments carefully. On the question of a wider conspiracy between the family and the sorcerer, the court agreed there wasn't enough proof and acquitted everyone of that specific charge. But it reached a different conclusion about the sorcerer himself, finding that his advice had directly set the killing in motion, regardless of whether a full conspiracy could be proven. Advising a family to kill a child, even without a formal plan involving everyone, was enough to hold him responsible for abating the murder. As for the teenager's silence, the court didn't see it as suspicious. It saw it as exactly what fear looks like in a 16-year-old. He hadn't simply witnessed a stranger's crime. He had been personally threatened with his own death by the man responsible and had fled the village the same night. The court found that explanation far more convincing than the idea of a coached, fabricated story, especially since his account matched the physical evidence at every point investigators were able to check. The rope, the phone, the location, all of it lining up with what he had described. When the case reached the High Court on appeal, the judges revisited each of these arguments from scratch. They agreed that the teenager's fear was genuine and his account reliable. They agreed the sorcerer's advice had abated the killing, even without a proven conspiracy. But on one point, the High Court disagreed with the trial court entirely: the conviction of the accused parents and siblings who had been found guilty of helping hide the body. Looking closely at the evidence, the judges found nothing that actually connected them to that act and acquitted them completely. The man who killed Satish was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. The sorcerer was found guilty of abating that murder and received the same sentence. The state had pushed for the death penalty instead, arguing that a crime built around the killing of a child for superstition was too horrific for anything else. The High Court disagreed, noting that the man had no prior criminal record and nothing suggested he posed a continuing danger beyond this one devastating act. Life imprisonment, the court held, was the appropriate punishment. For the adults involved, this case became years of trials, evidence, and legal arguments. But first ended on an ordinary afternoon when he walked into a neighbor's house expecting nothing more than a few minutes in front of a television.